Greetings, friends and music lovers. Welcome to my first official stream on my Vinyl Revival channel. Thank you for coming. And today I'd like to talk about one of my favorite Southern rock band, which I think is underrated, but I couldn't do this by myself. I could, but you guys will probably leave after 5 minutes. So I brought some good looking, resourceful people. And again, as always, in no order of importance, we'll go with Mr. 70s rock fan.
Well, good evening or good afternoon, and I'm glad you inserted the word music between lovers, friends and music lovers, instead of just friends and lovers. That may have seemed a bit like we're a bit too close. No, friends and lovers.
That would have made a great internet gossip.
Right.
Yes, good evening to you, sir, and good
Thank
evening,
you, sir. Thanks for joining me. And the other guy, another handsome, and believe it or not, ladies, he's single. I don't know why, but Mr. Pope Metallica is the first. Hello, Mr. Pope.
How's it going, man? Good to be back.
Thank you, sir. And I thank you for coming. I really appreciate you guys helping me out in all this. So,
Pope's a serial single guy. He's like a serial adulterer, the opposite of a serial adulterer.
Or maybe the problem is there's not enough good women out there for Dan. You know, maybe that's what it is.
I think he's just too much man.
He's too much man for all these ladies out there, and they can't handle him.
Maybe at the upcoming Judas Priest Sabaton gigs, he'll be able to
that would be
prove
nice.
his
That would be awesome.
prove his manhood. Yes. Anyway, yes.
Well, we'll start off. We got Davina in the chat. Thank you, Davina. Thanks for coming. Good evening to you, Davina. Thank you for coming. You are very kind. And another, speaking of resourceful people, Davina, if she doesn't know it, she makes it up. It's wonderful. I love it. So let's start today talking about I think it's underrated in comparison to the great Southern rock bands, like the obviously one, Allman Brothers, Leonard Skinner, and also in there I would add ZZ Top, which is also, these guys kind of went under the wire, even though they had great, their albums went pretty much all gold or platinum, but they were always underrated, kind of like the little brother of the big Southern rock sound.
Yeah, it seems like they kind of never get mentioned in the same breath as, like you say, as a Skinner or a ZZ Top, but they were right there with them the whole time.
Absolutely.
Yeah, you look at the number of concert posters from the era of 73 onwards, and you'll see all those bands on the same bills.
The tour you were talking about yesterday, had all of them on it.
Yeah, they were all on it, and I think it's possibly because looking back now on them, they're a little bit, their sound is actually very different from the other Southern rock bands. For one thing, they're a lot less rock.
Mm-hmm.
I think they were described as progressive country at one point, like progressive country. I could see that. There's a lot of jazz and other influences in there, and more mellow in some ways. So I guess they kind of get detached from the others who could rock a bit harder, you know.
That's right. And you said jazz. They were all lovers of jazz music back in high school when they all met. They pretty much all went, short of the drummer, they all went to the same high school in Spartanburg, South Carolina. I've done a lot of mileage, never been there, and they started off back in the late 60s. First of all, these guys were music lovers and so forth. They were jamming around and so forth. And the guy with the cowboy hat here, he's one of the founding members, Toy Caldwell. He had his own band called the Toy Factory. And they were messing around with that. But unfortunately, the Vietnam War interrupted it. So, the gentleman, Pope, you'll be proud of this. This gentleman at 19 joined the Marine Corps to serve in Vietnam.
Hell yeah.
Yes, sir. And unfortunately, his little brother didn't, but he did at the age of 19, served honorably for 3 years and got a medical discharge due to a landmine incident. I mean, he survived. So, In 69, he came back, and in 70. Now, if you look, there's quite a few vets here. One was in the Navy. I believe that was the drummer. And the lead singer was actually in the Army, and they all served in Vietnam. So,
I didn't know that. That's interesting.
yeah, lead singer was a Army, and I believe it's either the drummer. It's all foggy now, unfortunately. One of them was drafted to the Navy, and he served 2 years. And basically, all these guys came back around 70, back to South Carolina, Spartanburg, and all that. And they got together, and they were running what their band was the Toy Factory, named after Toy
And
Caldwell.
don't you think it's such an interesting name, Toy? I mean,
Yes,
I always thought there was a missing R every time I saw it. I thought, well, they've missed the R. It's got to be Troy. No, it's
Troy,
Toy
no.
Caldwell. I mean, who
Actually,
else has ever been called Toy?
Toy, I believe his second name is Johnson Caldwell Jr. His father had the same name. So that
it's just
goes
such
back,
a
yeah,
unique
uncommon.
name.
That is a
Southern
name you will
like
only find on Good Old Boy.
That's
pretty
right.
much.
Call me Toy,
That's right.
or else.
Or else, or you'll find out it's no game.
There ain't no fun if you
Yeah.
don't call me Toy. Yeah.
So they were jamming around and stuff like that. And actually, they were part of the local scene down there. They were going to Macon, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, and so forth. And here's them again in their prime, 73. And then they rented a warehouse to practice as the Toy Factory. And the legend is that they were going to open for the Allman Brothers, who, ironically enough, after a show they did, were signed to Capricorn Record, the same label as Elvin Bishop and the Allman Brothers. And in this warehouse, they figured, hey, we're not going anywhere with this Toy Factory name and everything. And ironically enough, this gentleman came into the picture, Mr. Marshall Tucker, a blind piano tunist, ironically enough, and very good too. And in the warehouse, he was renting space in the warehouse too, and they saw a keychain and his name on it, Marshall Tucker, and all the members are like, hey, let's call ourselves that. Ironically enough, they opened as Marshall Tucker for the Allman Brothers, got signed for Capricorn Record, and so forth.
Don't you think it's a shame they didn't invite him to join the band?
Yes, because this gentleman, even though he was blind all his life, could really set fire to a piano. He was an awesome piano player, also saxophonist and so forth. He was a music genius. And it would have been great to bring him into like in the 70s or something, but I think it took like up to 5 years until the band and this gentleman figured out what the hell's going on. Who's this Marshall Tucker band running around in the South?
I do love the fact he's got a gold record behind him, though. They must have given him a gold record.
Maybe.
That's nice. He died. He only died this year as well, at the age of 99.
Yes, January 20th this year at the age of 99. And he's survived by his wife of 50 years.
Holy crap.
Who also was blind. Ironically enough, him and his wife were both blind.
Incredible couple.
True love always is.
And this gentleman's no slouch. Like, he was tuning pianos, and one of his highest, to me, it seems good, he even tuned Liberace's piano. That's how good this gentleman was. Yeah, seriously.
Yeah, you know what? One thing about you would expect it to be more of an advantage in a marriage to be deaf than blind, but there you go. For a long marriage.
Right. Well, deafness is definitely a plus, you know. But whatever. What do I know? I'm only been 24 years so far. So, so on that note, they were also a great live band. If anything, they were a good studio band, but like you said yesterday in your show, 70s, they're like the Allman. They were a jamming band. They would go on for hours on stage. Memorable. Everybody had every musician had raw talent, from the Toy Caldwell to the flutists and all that. It was just a great show to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting that the bands of that era, particularly these southern bands, all prized their musicianship and their ability to play and their ability to play extended instrumental passages, as opposed to other strands of rock where it's been like, not, 1, 2, 3, 4, and then hammer
Mhm,
it out kind of thing.
mhm.
These bands, it was almost like they were the old jazz guys. They
Pretty much.
prized that musicianship.
Very similar creative process too, of just
Mm,
let's just start playing and see what comes up, what falls out of it.
yeah,
And
and
eventually, if you're making an album, somebody will hit the record button and you'll see how you do.
and I do love that the extended instrumental passages in there, especially. I mean, I'm a big fan of the first three or four albums. Used to hear them. Well, you still do hear them all the time in certain bars. I love that kind of just they just let every instrument has the space to breathe.
Mhm. And Pope, I think you did that in your history of rock and roll. In the 60s was just groundbreaking. You were getting 4 or 5 minute songs and stuff like that. You'd get guys like Jimi Hendrix and Eric Clapton and all these guys. And these guys are, I don't know if they fed off of it or if they're the next generation, but free flowing, long songs. Even their album music is up 5, 6, 7, 8 minutes long.
Yeah, and
Mm.
I think it's less that they themselves would have made that decision. I think it's the labels finally started letting bands do it because of the success of guys like Hendrix.
Mm.
Because
Yeah,
before that, it was if it's not a 3 minute or under song, it's not going on the radio, so we're not going to put any effort behind it.
Yeah,
exactly.
and of course, how many bands feature a flute as a leading instrument?
Well, I mean,
Not
Jethro
too
Tull.
many. Jethro Tull. There's a couple of others, Traffic and so on,
Yeah,
bands like that. But it's a beautiful instrument in the hands of is it Marcus Henderson, the guy's name? Just
Jerry
gorgeous.
Eubanks.
Yeah, because then you hear the sorry Jerry Eubanks. You hear the like in they allow that to allow that instrument that all that time as a lead instrument is quite unusual.
And it's so well made that it's not out of place. It's kind of like the
Mm,
Hammond organ into heavy metal. You would think Hammond organ heavy metal. No, it's kind of like flute in classic rock with Jethro Tull. It's like, that's it. Really, you look at that on paper, but in this Southern rock, bluesy rock, folk rock, and all that. And then you got a side flute. Yeah, they do it so
mm.
well. It's not even out of place.
Can't You See from the first album, of course,
oh,
which is a famous song.
probably the most beautiful song they've ever done. And like you say, every
Gorgeous.
instrument just has room to do their thing.
Hmm.
And
Yeah.
I mean, especially with something like a flute, goes to show you, you put a good musician on any instrument really, and he can just make it work with the music.
Mm.
Absolutely.
It
And
always
these guys,
reminds me of my favourite bar in Dallas, Katy Tree Lighthouse, because they would play Can't You See at least once a night, and on the rotation of music they'd play in the bar.
Although now, given the story behind the name Marshall Tucker, Can't You See almost sounds like a dig.
It does. It's oh, that's cruel. Cruel.
life's a little irony, you know.
Right. That's one of those things like, oh yeah, it's a great song title, and then look back on it like, ooh,
Yeah.
yeah. Second thought, maybe not.
And also some of the biggest hats in the business as a band,
Mm.
Well, I mean, in the South, it's a display of dominance. The bigger your hat, the more important you are.
That's right. Yeah, they all think they're starring in the TV show Bonanza. I think.
Nice. And here is Toy Caldwell, the Marine guy, the Marine
Purple Heart recipient, apparently.
Purple
Apparently.
Heart after his landmine thing. But he was also self-taught. Like he never played a slide guitar. That's him messing around with a slide guitar. And there's a little story where he was playing it out of tune, but he was playing it so well that nobody cared that it was out of tune, ironically
Hmm.
enough. But then he learned to tune it and all that. But all these guys are basically all self-taught. They're natural musicians.
It's hard to believe, isn't it, when you listen to the albums that because they're so intricate, and the music is so well played that they're just self-taught. I mean,
I
I know
know.
most rock bands are, but it's incredible the different level of musicianship you get in some bands.
And part of it
despite that.
down here in the American South, I mean, a lot of people couldn't afford music lessons, so you just
Mm,
take whatever instrument you've got and to hand and just play around with it and see what comes out.
mm,
And the beauty is these guys just had raw talent. Didn't matter what they touched. It's kind of like the businessman who touches everything and turns to gold. These guys turned to gold literally. They did 14 albums. 12 of them went gold, which I think is what, over 100,000 sales, if I remember, and 2 of them went platinum. And we'll
mm,
showcase those 2. Now, these gentlemen were lucky enough because it was a small circle. They had a good friend, a unofficial member of the band, who brought back. And speaking of self-taught, this guy was an acquired musician too. Self-taught fiddle, banjo, guitar, everything. Charlie Daniels, who stepped in many times and was really good friend with the band. More or less, Charlie Daniels came from North Carolina. The boys came from South Carolina, but they were running the same circuit and everything. And I believe that he even excelled. Mind you, he wasn't on the first album in 73. He came in around 74, 75, but he played fiddle on it. And he just, how could you not have a good record when you got Charlie Daniels playing
Yeah.
on it?
Pretty much. I mean, with this group of musicians, you add in a fiddler like Charlie Daniels, and you've got a hell of a combo.
Absolutely.
Yeah, he was an inspirational figure to a lot of bands. I think at that time, and organizing things like the volunteer jams and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, very distinctive. That's the thing about him and about this band, that I don't know if you could say they sound like anybody else. Even in a crowded country southern rock field, these guys sound different.
Well, you listen to the Allman, you can hear the hard.
You know who
blues
the Allmans
influence.
are, yeah.
Yeah. You listen to Leonard Skinner, it's Leonard Skinner. You listen to 3 random songs of these guys, you would think it's 3 different bands, but it's always great.
I didn't realize, and I hadn't thought about it till today when I was looking the band up a little, that "Can't You See" had been recorded by so many other people as a cover. I mean, Waylon Jennings and Hank Williams Jr. and a bunch of other people. That's quite the stamp of approval for a younger band.
From legends of the country genre, no less.
Yeah.
Guys like Waylon Jennings were very, very
Oh.
big back then.
Especially as that was in the when Waylon Jennings was doing stuff like "Are You Ready for the Country," which is a brilliant album, a brilliant song. It's quite rarefied. It's like royalty doing your song.
Yeah, I mean, these guys probably freaked out when they heard that they got covered by Waylon Jennings of all
Jennings.
people.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean Waylon knows who we are?
But the sad thing of all this, and this came to me when I was doing my research for the band, is figure there were 5, 6 members. Half of the members could have been killed in Vietnam, and we would never have been blessed by this great band. One of them, the lead guitarist, Toy Caldwell, slide guitar and all that, he was near a landmine. If we lost him, and he's the one who wrote "Can't You See," he's the one who wrote pretty much all the songs on their albums. But the thing is, imagine if we would have lost these guys in Vietnam, we never would have been blessed by this, this great ensemble, and Charlie Daniels too. But
yeah, and I knew a couple of guys like this in the Marine Corps that were just really talented musicians and were, clearly just locked in on that. Unfortunately, a couple of them did get wounded pretty badly. So, one of them, unfortunately, a guitar player lost his left arm, so you can never play again. So it is, like you say, it's a tragedy that we'll never get to see what those guys came up with.
And it could have been the next Eric Clapton or the next Stevie Ray Vaughan or Jimmy Vaughan. Who would have known? So, forgive me.
We fortunately got blessed with all of these guys coming back home and creating some absolutely fantastic, more chill Southern rock.
I've always liked these album covers, the artwork as well. This one's possibly they got slightly more fantastical as they went, but this is a beautiful cover. I have no idea who did the artwork. It's gorgeous album cover though, really
Yeah.
nice, and most of their album covers were very interesting.
But that's the golden age of album covers. Nowadays, when the CD came in, we lost all this beauty. Like the art, some of these artists, you could have sold this at probably an art show and you could have got quite a bit of good coin on this. The beautiful art that the album covers always had. I'll never get over that.
Yeah, not just stamped out cookie cutter. These were really beautiful album covers. I think when I'm just looking at like Long Hard Ride, with the stagecoach on the cover coming out of the river, it's just beautiful, sort of very evocative of that Western era, which is interesting because they're an East Coast band.
South Carolina, yeah.
But they did a lot of Western imagery, which is classic Americana.
Yeah.
They looked great, these album covers.
Yeah, I mean, I love that they show off just like classic American landscapes too, because like if I'm visiting my folks or whatever, I can step off on the back porch and see something very similar to that. So like, that is just what this area of the country looks like.
Yeah, but you look at the top, that looks like boreal lights to me, but it doesn't matter. It's just gorgeous and beautiful.
Oh yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal.
And the artwork, and unfortunately, well, mind you, even though I named my channel Vinyl Revival, vinyl is actually making a comeback. People and some bands are actually starting to print on vinyl. You can actually buy vinyls now, not as much as back in the 70s.
I buy a few, but it's quite expensive, unfortunately, new vinyl. And I try to buy a little bit of it. I'd love to buy more, but I bought an EP recently and it was $25 for a 4-track EP. And it's, there's only so many of those you can buy when you're limited budget.
But like you said, even the newer bands are starting to print their new records on vinyl at release for the first time in a long time, which I love, because especially for collectors like us, that's like I get the album cover like as bigger than life. I get to sit there and actually experience the album like the old days.
If only somebody had the word vinyl in their channel title.
If only, but we'll never know. But I know Tom Connors. I'll name drop him. He's like, I was on one of his stream chatting. He's like, Christian DeLorme, Vinyl Revival. Yeah, I like vinyl, but digital is better. I'm sorry, Tom. Vinyl is the best sound you will ever get. And much better than digital. It's the purest, rawest, most natural, and also the intended sound. And to go back to what you guys were talking about, 70s, is remastered really good? No, it's not.
Well, obviously it does depend, because some albums were not well mixed or mastered at the time of release, and a shoddy job may have been done. So then it is worthwhile then. But is it worth doing just for the sake of doing it because technology keeps moving forward? Oh well, we'll do them again. We'll do them again. Is it diminishing returns? Does it get any better at a certain point?
I think there's a dividing line too on a lot of records where a lot of it didn't need a remaster. It's just the label trying to get you to buy the same album you already own on a new format or in a newer, updated version.
Yeah. That's the implication can be this is yet another commercial cash grab because you bought the same thing 5 times in your history already,
Right. It's like the switch from VHS to DVD. You end up buying all the movies you already had.
But not only that, they're remastered for like what you guys were talking about in your last show on Roadies there, 70s, like remastered, $200, the Beatles and all that. Like, hello, like, do we really need all this?
Yeah, beautiful, gorgeous LP sets, 6 LP blue and red album Beatles, but they're like $250.
Yeah, and tell me that does not. That reeks of corporatism at its worst.
Yeah, I mean, you really, really have to want that, or to be a dedicated collector, especially if you've got the same stuff 4 times already.
That's right. Yeah, in cassette and vinyl and CD, and now in digitally remastered. Blah blah blah.
Now I have got 3 or 4 Marshall Tucker Band albums, both on vinyl and digitally, and I mean, my vinyl setup is okay. but I don't think the digital ones sound any better.
Mm.
If you know what I
No,
mean.
no, I
They're
agree
convenient.
with
It's
you.
convenient, but it's not necessarily better.
And
But
especially
again,
for older albums, like the newer stuff, I can see because it's all digitally processed and all that. So you're going from digital to an analog media. But for the classic albums like this, I mean, it was recorded on a tape and then mastered. I don't think you're going to get any clearer sound out of it.
I
but
don't think so. Yeah. And there's a limit to how well you can hear.
Yeah.
Like, there's an upper limit to how good you can hear. So how much more detail can you take?
Yeah, it's like you can digitally remaster Robert Johnson all you want, but you can't put in data that wasn't there to begin with.
Yeah, yeah.
and
That's a
don't
good
forget,
point.
there's the other thing. There, I call it the vinyl experience. Back then, okay, Brian, you're old enough to remember. You buy a vinyl, you bring them home, you put it on the turntable. What do? You start listening to music, and you look at the art, and you're studying it. You open it
Mm.
up, or you turn it around. You look at the credits. You look at who did this. You look at the pictures. It's a whole experience that, unfortunately, digital has lost. Even CD has lost. It's been lost since CD. The thing was, it was an old experience, visually, and sorry,
Well,
I'm
you
losing.
felt you had something in your hand,
That's right. And
as
you
the
bought.
actress said to the bishop.
Yep. Thank you. And but anyway, it was a whole thing. You brought in an album and all that, and again, you looked at the art, and sometimes you'd have extra stuff in it. Sometimes it was the lyrics inside the sleeve. Sometimes it was something else. But anyway, that was my thing with that. This one here is a self-titled album that did went gold, released in '73 with all the original members and no extra or anything. And this is the one that put them on the map with "Can't You See" on it, the
Mm,
'73 version. And I figured that was one of the
beautiful
very,
track.
oh,
Beautiful
beautiful
track. Yeah.
and great album to showcase. If you
Great
listen to it,
vocal.
oh, great vocal. Well, the thing is, you had the lead vocalist. I always forget his name, Doug Gray, which is the
Mm.
Army veteran. That guy did 99.9%. Tori Caldwell, the Marine, only sang on that one song, and ironically enough, it was their biggest hit. I know, it's kind of funny. So you got this album, and then there.
Take the Highway is a great track as well. Track
Oh,
one.
I
No.
love it.
Now
I
here
love
you
it.
go. Here's that's what I was saying. They get into some more fantasy inspired covers. I just think this is gorgeous. Absolutely
And
gorgeous.
And I always thought, if you look at their history, their discography, it seems to be going Southern Texas, Arizona, cowboy. I'm like, aren't you guys from like you said, the East Coast and South Carolina? Shouldn't you be playing bluegrass? But they were always going towards that fantastic
Western
Texas,
thing.
plains, Western thing.
That
This,
and the populations out there are so much larger than just in the deep south. I mean, you got Texas, Arizona, that place, like they're two of the most populous states in the country. So that's where the market is.
right.
So you
And
got to play
This
to
is a
your
great.
audience a bit.
Yeah, I mean, this is a great album for many reasons. But you've got Fire on the Mountain,
Oh
yeah,
yeah.
brilliant track. You've got guys like Dickie Betts and Charlie Daniels and Chuck Leavell on it. So a lot of great guest musicians.
hmm
In fact, it's just a beautiful album.
and the
Great
art is
album.
wonderful. Hey, low spec
Hey,
Linux, sorry, low spec. Thanks for coming, buddy. But this is I think one of their platinum albums. They're one and they only had two platinum. This is the most commercial success. And Charlie Daniel, actually, this is the song with Fire on the Mountain that Charlie Daniels
Mm.
was originally supposed to cover, but he's like, yeah, I don't know what really happened. But then his buddy and his friends in the Marshall area will take it over. So he came in, which hence Charlie Daniels is the unofficial member of Marshall Tucker, and he played fiddle on this.
Mm.
Just a great, great album.
and when you
Wonderful.
look at like the two top tracks on these records, like you two very different styles in that can't you see you have this very laid back kind of just chill vibe, and then you hear it's Fire on the Mountain. You hear him with that passion in his voice and that power in it. It's really really cool to see two
Mm.
completely different vocal styles on the same band.
Yeah.
And also the music puts you almost like when you listen to Can't You See and you visualize the lyrics, it sounds like Southern Georgia and all that. But you listen to this sounds like North Carolina, Tennessee, mountains and stuff like that. It's just wonderful. And it's a story of moving out west, but it's just a beautiful, rich sound. Like, again, we were blessed to have these guys.
I would say Fire on the Mountain is in the top 10 of all time great Southern rock tracks, in my opinion.
Absolutely.
Oh yeah.
And it might even cross over genders, genres. It could
We
even
don't want to go there.
Not on this platform.
slip of the French tongue here. I apologize, but it could be country, it could be Western too. You know, it's
Both types of music, yeah.
yeah.
It's just a classic piece of Americana, you know. I mean, it's
Yep. Not almost as good as Creedence Clearwater Revival. I like Brian and Pope. I know you guys. We both agree, and you said the greatest American band was Creedence Clearwater Revival. These guys are a close second.
I mean, I would put them up there certainly.
oh,
yeah.
for sure, yeah. I
They're
love
in the
that.
conversation. I think Jimi Hendrix might beat him out by a little bit, but only because of the high points.
Mhm.
You can't. He only has 4 albums.
That's right. It's 4 albums and 600 compilations.
Yeah.
I do like their logo is actually beautiful as well. I mean, the way the
Yes.
Marshall Tucker Band was, I don't know if I don't think it started like that, but they had a
Kind of
different
reminds me of
script.
like the old circus logos and stuff
Yeah.
like that.
But
Like you
this
see on the
time
side of
they,
the circus train.
yeah, I mean, this time they changed to this logo. I think it's great. I don't know anything about fonts, but it looks really good.
But by then they had their identity, they had their sound, and they had commercial success, and they could do whatever they wanted. And like Pope said, the studios would actually let them do what they want, and they came out with Carolina Dreams. And ironically enough, J-Mo from the Allman Brothers actually played percussion on this album.
All right, okay.
And
I
there's
guess they were pretty close, the two bands.
not only that, there's another one before this that came out in 74, Where We All Should Be. And they actually had Elvin Bishop playing guitar on that album. Like
Nice.
that would be their third album. But I think because Capricorn was such a small studio that you would cross-pollinate, the lack of a better explanation, cross-pollinate the musicians, because Elvin Bishop, Allman Brothers, and Marshall Tucker were all part of that studio, that label. So maybe some would just come and sit in and play together and so forth.
I guess so. I mean, they were all friends, I think. I mean, they all toured together. You know,
Absolutely.
they're in different
And especially
bills.
between Marshall Tucker and the Allmans, it's they come from that jam band mentality of, yeah, man, just sit down and plug in. We'll see what comes out of it.
And
And
this has got another big hit in it, of course. They heard it in a love song. Another stalwart of the Katy Trail Ice House in Dallas.
but to go
I can hear
back,
it going around in my head every day because of that when I used to live there.
and it's an earworm. It's an earworm. And when
Heard
it
in a love song. You can't get that out of your head.
And that one's more straight up country than anything else.
Oh, that's way more country. Yeah, beautiful song though.
That would have been, familiar coming out of a band like Alabama or something like that, not necessarily Southern rock.
Kind of, yeah. Nitty gritty dirt band.
Yep.
yeah, that too.
But it was actually, according to the interwebs, a big hit in Canada. Not that I lived in Canada then, but it was a number 5 hit on the Canadian charts.
Nice.
So there you go. Canada knew where it was at.
That's right. Well, mind you, sometimes okay, they also like Tiny Tim up here, so that should tell you something. Tiny Tim had a hit in Canada.
Tiptoe through the tulips. That was Tiny Tim. The ukulele.
And
But yeah, I do love that song though. It's nice. Not
It
Tiptoe Through the
is.
Tulips. Heard it in a love song.
But it was such a great band, and I'll never scratch the surface of how great that band is and how deep you can go. They had 14 albums. Jesus, after they're still touring to this day. You still had the lead singer Gray, and he's still touring, and he was doing tours with Charlie Daniels and ZZ Top. Imagine that,
Yeah.
Pope.
That would be a hell of a lineup.
It is,
Yeah.
and it's such a mixture as well when you consider Top's all bluesy hard rock, and then this stuff's more kind of country, jazz, blues, whatever. It's very true. Hey, they even supported Led Zeppelin at times.
That's a little bit of a clash of
I
styles.
know. I mean, but you would think that wouldn't go over, but I mean, it probably did at the time.
Like,
Hey,
you
if
have these
everyone's
guys
stoned, who
jamming,
knows?
like kind of jamming out and chilling in the opening, and then you'd have this loud ass rock
Yeah,
band
I
come
guess
on.
everyone's stoned and mellow during the first set, and then Zeppelin come on and wake everybody up.
I guess.
But Mr. 70s,
I'm
I
afraid
know
I gotta
you
quit.
have. I know you're quit, and you're very generous with your precious
Oh,
time.
I'm
and
sorry I
thank
couldn't
you
stay till the
kindly.
end, guys.
That's
but we'll
fine. It's
do
all
it again.
good.
We'll do it again soon.
Do you have? Would you like to pimp anything?
Not
Pimp
really.
yourself.
No, not really. Other than maybe bourbon and boarding on Saturday night, which
Yes.
Christian, you're gonna have to stay up late one night to the middle of the night and watch it
Hey,
sometime.
It's hard north of 50 years old. It's hard to stay up past 10 o'clock.
Yeah,
I
not
tell
easy
ya.
for me. You know, it's even harder for me, and I'm doing the
Yeah.
damn show.
Yeah, but you're cheating. You're cheating on me. You're 2 hours behind me
I
in
know,
time
I know.
zones.
Yeah, we
So
still can't find another time slot that works, so it's going to stick at that time slot for now.
midnight's perfect, and especially for hockey. Everybody just finished a hockey game Saturday night in Canada, hockey night in Canada, and all that. People had a few beers and they get onto your show. It's the ideal time.
Oh yeah, so check that out for those who are into hockey and just watching two old bald guys like me and Brahma chewing the fat and drinking. Then it's a lot of fun. Pope's on there
Absolutely.
occasionally, so he'll be
Yep.
on again sometime.
Yeah, well, the Bruins are doing well again this year, so here's hoping.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Well, we won't talk about Ottawa.
Don't talk about the
Oilers
Sens
team.
though. Don't talk about the Sens. Don't mention the Sens.
Hey, well, the beauty about the Sens is you can only look one way up.
Fair.
I think I mentioned them once and I got away with it, but don't do it again. That's a Faulty Towers reference.
You got it. Excuse me. Well,
Right,
thank you,
well,
sir.
Thanks for having me. I'll speak to you guys again soon.
Have a good
Cheers.
one, man.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. All right, sir. Just the two of us.
Alrighty.
All right. So I got a few questions, and again, we won't keep this long. I was thinking maybe 45 minutes. I keep the stream going. But first of all, you're what, one generation below me? You're in your 30s. I'm in my 50s.
Yeah.
First of all, how did you get to being a headbanger and so forth in Chief? How did you find out about these guys?
Well, this is actually, I've been a fan of these guys since before I knew about metal and all that, because my dad's from right in the prime time slot for these guys, and the early 70s. He was just out of high school, so I grew up listening to him. And the classic rock station around me in Boston, WZLX, had Marshall Tucker on all the time.
Yeah, Can't You See, right?
Can't You See and Fire on the Mountain. Quite a bit.
Okay. Right.
That was part of their regular rotation, so I kind of grew up with it.
Right.
And then, as I got more into music and stuff, I kind of keep coming back around to the Southern rock artists, because there's a lot, like you said, there's a lot of really great musicians in this genre all over the shop. I mean, you have one of the best guitar players of all time in Billy Gibbons from ZZ Top. You have, the collection of musical genius you see in the Allman Brothers and Marshall Tucker all over the place. You get, rock legends like Lynyrd Skynyrd and 38 Special. So it's just and of course, the greatest American band of all time is CCR. So you have a great talent pool in this genre. And it's always fun to just come back and listen to every now and again. And especially since I moved to the South, you hear it a lot more around here now.
Well, as you know, I'm a truck driver, and back in my younger days, I used to travel the South. And as soon as you reach south of Pennsylvania, south of Maryland, boom, all the good Southern rock.
Yep.
And that's all you had on the radio. Good music we didn't get in Canada. I used to love running the South for many different reasons, grits included, but music, that was one of the main things, all the good music.
Yeah, I mean, that's still a thing to this day. I mean, most bars around here are all playing country music. You know, it's just kind of a thing around here. And Marshall Tucker especially feels like to me more like this area, the country, kind of that chill, laid back kind of mountain boy vibe.
And I'd say that music is non-pretentious. You know, it's not somebody that went to university and sociology and all that. It's basically something that everybody can relate to. It's a blue collar, down to earth. Like these guys served in Vietnam. These guys went to Spartanburg, high school. You know, and they just started their band. Like they sound like you could go and sit with any of these guys and have a beer, and it would be a normal conversation.
Yeah,
You know,
and the sound itself is pretty unpretentious too. It's just, a bunch of good old boys sitting around playing instruments and just making music.
and don't get me wrong, and I know I'm stepping on Davina's toes here. Progressive rock is great in its own sense, but it's got a sound of pretension in it and stuff like that. It's great music. I love it, but this is something that anybody could like. And the lack of the ultimate test was always how my children, when they were toddlers, would react to the music. And when you see a 3-year-old kid start swinging around to this kind of music, you know it's good.
Oh yeah.
So that's
And
that.
and they were, more, like I said, more on the country side of things, but they had added a lot of blues in there too, and that kind of changes the whole vibe of the music. And I really, really dig a lot of their stuff.
And also a touch of jazz. Jazz is always good. Like there's a bit of jazz in the Allman Brothers, but these guys brought it, especially with the flute, like you were telling me, transversal flute. It's just a great band. And like I said, I covered them till 1980 because that's when, ironically enough, tragedy. Like it seems every Southern rock band's got tragedy, whether it's Leonard Skinner, the Airplane, the Allman with Dwayne Allman and his motorbike. These guys, the brothers, you had Toy Caldwell. He was the lead guitarist, but his younger brother, Tommy, actually died in an accident 30 days after his younger brother, Billy, died. So in 1 month, that band lost its bass player, and pretty much the whole band was grieving in 1980 because 2 of the family members of 3 brothers were all gone. Imagine that in 30 days.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like if you want to keep your Southern rock musicians alive, don't let them near anything with an engine.
Exactly. No airplanes, no motorcycle, no cars, no nothing. Just a walk, take to transit, whatever. So, yeah. So that's that. But anything you want to add, Pope? As we're going to keep this one short.
All right. Well, I mean, really just listen to these guys and kind of listen to them on the albums the way the band meant to show it to you, because I think you'll get a lot more out of the whole album than you do out of just one track selected here or there. Mm-hmm. And like we were saying, that's the way the band wanted it presented to you, and that's the way they meant it. Mm-hmm. So I always recommend that, and really just listen to Marshall Tucker because it's a good time.
And if you can get a few of their live albums, or even go on YouTube or Spotify, just get a live track. It's monster. The raw energy and the talent coming out, especially if Charlie Daniel is on stage with these guys, it's exactly what a great jamming band who's gifted musician. It's gorgeous. It's, excuse the expression, it's almost an orgasm for your ears. Is that too much, Pope?
No, I'd say orgasm kind of.
Orgasm. There we go. So you wanna well, basically I want to say thank you to Davina. Thanks for coming. Low Spec, thanks for coming too. And pretty much everybody else who will be watching this in the future, thank you. I appreciate you, and thanks for sharing our love for music. So, Mr. Metallicus, you want to pimp anything? Your shows, your plans, anything coming
Yeah.
up?
Well, I mean, you guys can find me over on my channel at Pope Metallicus for every Sunday. I cover rock and roll religion. I think this Sunday we're going to be covering a little Bob Seger. So
Oh, nice.
that'll be a fun show. Because
Absolutely.
another band my dad got me into when I was a little kid, and I've never lost the love of them. So we'll go down that rabbit hole a little bit. And other than that, you can catch me every Monday on 70s Rock Fans. It's only Talk and Roll or Canon Film Club, whichever one we're doing that week, and probably on here a fair bit. So
Hopefully,
thank you guys
yeah.
for coming out.
Well, thank you, everybody. Much love, and thanks for sharing our love for music. Until next time, have a great one.